like me. A guy who does the detective work nobody else wants to do. A guy who wears hats and walks around in a black and white world. I began contemplating a more profitable line of work, like politics.
We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to you.
All right, folks. Good morning and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN Radio Central. Let's do some housekeeping, folks. You can join the conversation over the next hour at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. And you can also text us in real time on our text line, which is 617-297-8388, 617-297-8388. And that appears here on a screen in the studio in real time as we broadcast from the Cameo studios. So the Cameo cam is on today behind the glass, flying the bird board, back at HQ. So he'll get you set up and into the studio for two-way talk and conversation at 508-871-7000. And don't forget, the station does stream 24/7 like thousands of other radio stations do on the TuneIn app. And that's a great feature. It means you can take us anywhere on your device. I love that feature. I use it all the time. And you can tell Alexa to play WCRN, and she'll do that with no questions asked. Now, I do stream the show from the studio, so you can go to the station's Facebook page or my social media at Joe Mangi Show, and that would be Facebook and X and Twitch TV, LinkedIn profile, Rumble, YouTube, and also now Instagram. So multiple ways to watch and listen. Hey, and don't forget, I do turn this into a podcast as soon as I get off the air. Naturally, we have our replay link at WCRNradio.com. But you can subscribe because you'll get this show as well as my TOFIs, today's observation for you, and other essays and commentary that I might be posting. You can subscribe on, well, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podbean, wherever you get those things. All right, 508-871-7000. There's a lot to talk about, always is, and we got to fit it all in a 1 hour spot here. I don't know if we want to stay domestically or if we want to go internationally here, but I mean, some of the things that are happening right now, and my computer is sticking, guys. So my apologies for that. It happens, right? To the best of us. Trump, I like this switcheroo they did, right? So coming back from Turkey, and I think this is back on the 8th. You remember this? And I do remember the media, the mainstream media on Air Force One. And when you're in the White House press pool, right? So obviously you got credentialed into the White House. Those are the people we used, we see Peter Doocy from Fox, and we used to see Tapper and everybody in that press room in the White House. And the one they were using during Trump's administration, and this administration they've been using for a while, is actually was the pool was covered. So there used to be a pool there, but they covered the pool, and that's where the press room is now. But when you're in the White House press corps, you are credentialed to the White House and any place the president's going to be, right? And it takes a little while. First of all, you're expected to be pretty good at the game. You're expected to be a good journalist. And obviously, I'm using that term loosely. But you're vetted too. The Secret Service has to vet you before you're allowed to have that proximity to the president. But you also get to you travel on Air Force One with the president. And the press corps part's in the back of the plane, and it's separated from the executive part of the plane, certainly from the office and the conference room. And there's a wall of Secret Service and press secretary between you and that area. But when they were leaving Turkey, they were all told, hey, put down the blinds. And if somebody raised the blind, which someone's going to do, right? They're instructed, put your blinds down, leave them down. And there's going to be one Jamoke at least in that press corps that's going to lift the blind. And they're told, put it back down. So when they got off the plane, they thought this was a big story. We were told something's up. Now, if you don't realize that something's up, where clearly the Secret Service wanted to darken out the plane and not be this beacon in the air of a silhouette of the plane, there's a reason for it. And here's the thing: there was a credible threat, and President Trump and Hegseth went into that plane, which was Air Force One, and then exited the other side or somewhere else, and was removed to be put on a second plane in the back of a catering truck. Now, I think, and in some cases I know, things like this is done all the time with the Secret Service. There are presidential doubles. They, one beast doesn't, when the motorcade goes, you don't see one beast. You see three beasts, three Cadillacs that all look like the beast. There are 4 Marine Ones that take off out of the White House compound and fly down the river. This is so it's not obvious which vehicle the president is in. So they had a credible threat. I mean, Iran would love to take Trump out. So then now that this is all out and this is spinning out here, what's the story that the mainstream media is doing? They're offended that they weren't briefed in real time what was happening, which is beyond ludicrous considering you people, have very clearly stated your feelings for Trump. B, you leak everything, right? So it would have been useless because it would have been absolutely leaked before either plane took off. And that plane that took off without the president in it continued to identify itself as Air Force One, which we know by now, you should know by now, that's a call sign. And that just simply means the president of the United States is on board that aircraft. And it doesn't matter what aircraft it is. It doesn't matter if it's a 747, or 757. It doesn't matter if it's a Piper Cub that the president had to get into. That becomes Air Force One. They kept the call sign up to present the illusion that POTUS was on that airplane, but him and Hegseth were not. But you had high-level cabinet members on the decoy plane. And then the media is trying to, they're getting very indignant about this, right? Well, if there was threat and we're in danger, what were you, sacrificing us? Guys, if you're in the presidential press corps and you think for one moment that if anything goes down, that Secret Service will put the president's life ahead of yours, you're delusional. And if you can't live with that reality, that that's too scary, or you don't like it, then ask for another assignment. Because if something does go down, you become fodder. And the Secret Service, they are not there to protect you. They have one fiduciary responsibility, one mission, one goal, one purpose of existing. And that is to protect the life of the president of the United States and then subsequently the cabinet and staff, okay? And there is a pecking order, by the way, of who go, obviously vice presidents after the president, and then they actually go by ranking. So stop it, give it a rest. And this stuff happens all the time. You just found out about it. And if you didn't think that the president and these high-ranking members of the cabinet being in a Middle Eastern city didn't come with incredibly heightened threats, again, you're not very good at your job, right? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. But speaking of the staff and so forth, this is out. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt will be stepping down. Now, Trump announced this yesterday. She's 28 years old when she took the right, youngest ever press secretary. She's going to leave at the end of this month. She's going to spend more time with her children. She now has 2. She recently returned from maternity leave. If you remember that, we had different cabinet members filling in for her. So she came back after the maternity leave for the second child. She called it bittersweet, and Trump praised her highly and said she will remain a top outside advisor, an influential Republican voice heading into the midterms. And to be 28 years old and to have been the press secretary, and now you will be a close advisor to the sitting president, that's pretty impressive. Major personnel story here is is this: the White House is messaging the loyalty and work-life balance under the administration. And you have to understand the pressure that there is working in the White House to work for this administration. And actually, and I'm going to say this administration above other administrations. I think, and I think most of you would agree, and even those that do not like Trump would agree, it's a very past. I mean, the same things you criticize him for about being all over the place and doing a million things at once, but I never understood why that is a critique. I mean, it's a critique, but why would it be a negative critique? Because the man in this administration can chew gum and walk down the street at the same time. They have multiple things going on. He has a campaign going on in Iran. He's got the exercises and the operations we've done, with Venezuela and so forth, securing the border. They can do a lot of things at once. But the pace of this administration, and we know that Trump is a guy that sleeps very little, 3-4 hours a night. He's up in the middle of the night. He's up early. And unlike the BS line that we were being fed by the press secretary and others around Joe Biden about him running laps around us and he's at the top of his game and all that, we all know that was just a bunch of BS on that. But I think if you're in this particular White House, all White House, right? Remember the old show, it might have been the 90s, was it? I'm not sure when it was out, the West Wing. And that was one of the continuous themes in that. And they tried to, Sorkin was the producer, all right? He tried to really make it realistic. And he showed through the show that just how long the days were, how much pressure that job is. And he was basing it on the real testimony and stories of people who worked in the White House. And it's a lot of pressure, but Caroline Leavitt will be leaving. And if you didn't see this in changing continents or countries for a minute, 7.4 quake in Colombia, strongest in Colombia this century. Right? And so it hit the coffee region cities. This is Monday, a couple days ago, 3 days ago. Death toll right now, about 265, 3,500 plus injured, hundreds of thousands missing, unaccounted for, thousands of homes destroyed. And the rescues are now, it's Thursday, and they're in the final phase as, that key 72-hour window closes. And when you look at places, I mean, we have buildings engineered for earthquakes. I mean, you go to the California, San Francisco, these skyscrapers, they're built on pads, even in New York, where they're built with such heavy construction and then built for earthquake proof, right? So you have your piping that is curved to be able to take the stress of moving, buildings slide on a pad, the way they reinforce the concrete. But when you get to some of these countries in South America, some maybe, but not all the buildings are built with the same engineering. First of all, some of the buildings there have been built hundreds of years ago. But even those built, say, in the last century or in the last 50 years weren't necessarily engineered with earthquake in mind. So usually we see this in the same thing, right? Whether we see it in Indonesia or places, they can be devastating because the construction cannot stand up to the earthquake or even stand up to the tsunamis or hurricanes the way a lot of our buildings in the United States can do that. So good thoughts for our friends and neighbors there in Colombia, largest earthquake this century, and that's a pretty tough thing to deal with. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. Now, overall, if you're honest about this and you take a step back and you look at the Trump administration, whether it's term one, term two, there's been a lot of innovative and good ideas. I think even, again, the opponents, I mean, the real Trump derangement syndrome people are never going to acknowledge anything. But if you're honest about it, there's been some really good ideas, outside the box thinking, right? The no tax on tips and things. Well, there's another one here, and I don't know if you guys caught this. And you got Secretary Sean Duffy, who has launched a new recruiting program with the FAA targeting gamers. That's right, gamers. So what they've decided to do is, hey, we're going to open up recruiting again because we have a real problem with the number of air traffic controllers, especially. Remember last year when it was kind of leaked out and it came to be known as common knowledge that they had lowered some of the standards to meet DEI pressures and so forth. And that's been rectified. And when it comes to things like this, man, we cannot have DEI dictating this. We cannot have racial quotas. We cannot have gender quotas. We can't have any of that. It has to be the standard, and the minimum standards have to be met. And the meritocracy that has to be there. And we see that in sports because if you're going out for the NFL or the NBA, it doesn't matter, right? What religion you are or what color your skin is or the pigmentation you may have. They need to know your ability to score or defend or if you can handle the job. Well, the FAA air traffic controllers should be to that same standard, should they not? We're talking about life and death here. We're talking about crafts traveling through the air, weighing hundreds of thousands of tons, having 200-300 souls on board from time to time. So the FAA and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, they launched this deliberate campaign to recruit video gamers into air traffic control centers. And it wasn't an accidental discovery here. See, the department specifically targeted gamers because it believes that the certain gaming skills translate to ATC, air traffic control. The FAA said, look, you look at those skills, high cognitive functioning, multitasking, spatial awareness, strategy, and problem solving, rapid processing of information, maintaining attention while multiple things are happening simultaneously. And if you look at all of those skills that if you're a good gamer, you have and or developed, and they can be transferred to an air traffic controller's position. And I think this is a brilliant outside the box idea. Now, the campaign opened in April. In that hiring window, the one that they had the explicit gaming theme to it, targeting those people. And the campaign slogan was, it's not a game, it's a career. They received 12,350 applications during only a 24-hour window. And 10,779 qualified applicants in 24 hours. That's more than double its previous first day record. And the DOT says qualified applicants were being processed 7 times faster than the previous year. So the FAA says more than 2,000 gamers have been hired into the air traffic controller pipeline. And Secretary Duffy said this is to reach the next generation of air traffic controllers, we need to adapt. This campaign's innovative communication style and focus on gaming taps into a growing demographic of young adults who may have many of the hard skills it takes to be a successful controller. And I know I've shared this story sometime in the past, but in the 80s, when Ronald Reagan fired all of the air traffic controllers, and for those of you of a certain age like myself, you remember that. We lived through it. And later we found out when the wall fell and Soviet Union broke up and we got access to former KGB operatives and files, we learned then that move by Ronald Reagan was the catalyst and very much responsible, one of the reasons responsible behind the fall of the Soviet Union. Because at that point, the best Soviet psychologists, psychiatrists, and profilers and intelligence officers that have their career is studying the United States, studying our way of life, how we think, and of course, intelligence officers would be assigned to certain politicians. And those assigned to Reagan, they had their hands filled. And they realized when Reagan fired all the air traffic controllers that this is a guy that we can't really predict what he's going to do. The United States, we ran and we run off of our planes, our air traffic, and that he will do whatever he thinks is best, just like Trump will do America first, whatever he thinks is best for America to come out on top and to win. And when they realized that, they realized that this guy, meaning Reagan, was not going to fold and necessarily, function like a normal politician to the pressures and concerned about his reputation. And that's very much what they're dealing with Trump. So at that time, there was a big recruiting, right? They brought in the military air traffic controllers. And my sister and I actually went to a recruiting session in Nashua for the FAA. And I was a pilot, and I was considering this might be a good career because it has the opportunity. You can, if you get in, depending where you score, the higher the guy running this thing said, if you score the top of the testing, the very top, where do you think you work? And everybody's saying, well, Hawaii, trying to figure things out. And the answer was wherever you want. But this was a job where you could live almost anywhere you wanted in the country, but you could also, and this was the part that really bothered me, they could assign you wherever they want, which means you could have been in Anchorage or, in the winter in North Dakota or anything like that. But it's a very high pressure and it's a very tough job to have. And they make maybe 150,000, maybe to 200,000 in busy airports. So it's a good income, it's a good job, good retirement, good benefits, but it is high pressure. And I think this is a great outside the box thing, right? And I think this whole administration has been a pretty great idea machine. They have done this with, unconventional approaches. And if you don't know this or know anybody close enough to Trump to ever tell you this, he will listen to everybody. The whole tax on tips was a result of a casual conversation with the waitress in Nevada. So when someone traditionally in government says that's not how government has traditionally done it, the philosophy with this administration seems to be, why not? Why not? So recruiting gamers as air traffic controllers, and if you want to get a taste of this, now I stream on Twitch, but Twitch is predominantly known for a channel where gamers will stream in real time, them playing a game, and I know I get it. If you don't understand this and you're hearing it now for the first time, that there's a channel where all you do is you're watching the back of the head of a gamer playing a game and you're thinking, I don't get it. Do it for a little while and you do get sucked into it. Even though you're not playing the game, you're watching some of the top gamers in the world playing these incredibly popular games. It can be interesting. But when you take the spatial awareness and the multitasking, the rapid decision making, the pattern recognition, the concentration, the strategic thinking, these are all things an air traffic controller needs. And they can be transferred. Skills can be transferred to other things. How many people have been told their entire lives that playing video games was a waste of time? And then now the federal government is saying, actually, those skills might qualify you for a six-figure career. And there's another, and we don't talk about it as much, But the Air Force, when they do recruit, they're very interested when you come into the recruiting station and you don't really want to tell your recruiter that basically all you do is hang out in your mom's basement and play video games all day. What the recruiter here says is this might be a good candidate for our drone program. Because in essence, what is a drone pilot? But sitting in a darkened trailer truck somewhere in Nevada with massive screens in front of you in what seems to be pretty much a video game, but the only difference is there's a real drone, not a pixelated aircraft in front of you. That's a real drone, real targets. But those skills are transferable to being a drone pilot. So that's cool. But we had the no tax on tips, right? That was really working families' tax cuts. That the Trump administration created a deduction for qualified tip income with a maximum deduction of $25,000. Look, that makes a big difference to that blue collar, lower income families. It really, really does. And this administration has taken the posturing of you earn money, you keep more of it. Because you will spend it, you'll spend it better than the government can spend it. And you're going to remember simple economic rule here in economy, and any economist will tell you that every dollar has a 7-generation ripple. So if you take home an extra $100 a week, that's a $700 injection into the money flowing around in your immediate area. And the administration also invoked the no tax on overtime. Again, you work more, they're going to take less. You're not going to be punished for doing that. And of course, the new senior deduction. I know we commonly call that no tax on Social Security, but that's really what it is. And then, of course, the gold card and platinum card, right, for coming into the country. You know what that is. If you didn't, I'll be glad to talk about it another time. But we're going to take our Thursday morning show break here on AM 830 WCRN, the Joe Mangiacotti Show. We'll take a break, a couple minutes. We'll come back on the other side, folks. So stick with us. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. And don't forget the text line is up and running at 617-297-8388.
WCRN.
Time now for the forecast from the Boston Independence Group Weather Center. Call Jerry Doherty today at 877-772-1776. Retirement is within reach.
I'm meteorologist James Strangelo, and here's the latest Boston 25 weather on Radio 830 WCRN. For today, expect partly cloudy skies, isolated showers and thunderstorms possible throughout the day into the evening. High temperatures in the lower 80s. As we head for tonight, a few spots dipping back down in the upper 50s, around 60 by the coastline under partly cloudy skies. Mostly sunny for tomorrow. High temperatures very similar in the lower 80s. Could see a stray storm for the afternoon. I'm James Strangelo, and you can hear Boston 25 live for the morning drive weekdays on AM 830 WCRN.
Headline news, weather, and local information central to your day on Radio Central 830 WCRN.
There's a threat targeting America, one that's growing fast but may still be hard to see. Lyme disease. Spread by tiny ticks, often smaller than the head of a pin, this dangerous disease is now more widespread than West Nile, tuberculosis, and HIV/AIDS combined. And if left untreated, it can lead to arthritis, facial paralysis, and even memory and concentration problems, often called brain fog. As the threat of Lyme disease grows to more than 300,000 projected cases each year, it's time for us to target Lyme disease. That means checking for ticks when you've been outside, even in your own backyard. It means seeing a doctor if you experience the symptoms of Lyme disease, which can include joint pain, flu-like symptoms, fever, fatigue, or sometimes a bullseye-shaped rash. Set your sights on stopping Lyme. Learn how you can target Lyme disease at targetlyme.org. Brought to you by the Stephen and Alexandra Cohen Foundation and this station.
Radio Central, 830 WCRN.
All right, folks, welcome back here to the second half of the Thursday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN Radio Central. You can join the conversation at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. You can also text us in real time if you'd like to do that. We have a text line up and running, and you know that number. It's 617-297-8388. 617-297-8388. You text that like you do anybody else. It appears on a screen here in the studio in real time. And don't forget, we are streaming on multiple platforms, whether it's the station's Facebook page, my social media platforms at Joe Mangi Show, MANGI, which is Facebook, X, Twitch TV, as I said, LinkedIn profile, YouTube on my channel, Rumble channel, and yes, on Instagram as well. But the show, this live radio terrestrial show, when I get off the air, other than being on the replay link at WCRNradio.com, it is available as a podcast. Subscribe wherever you do for your podcast, whether it's iHeartRadio or Spotify or Podbean. And every time I post a new audio, whether it's a show, today's observation for you, or anything else, it will download. You'll have it. So I saw this story, and I'd love to get the feedback on it because, of course, it's controversial because it's an ICE thing, and not ICE like the and I don't know if you caught this, Ice Cube, the rapper, and then he went on to the Law and Order fame, right, playing a police officer. His tour bus, which is this massive 40-foot bus, white bus, and in black lettering it says Ice Cube, and then the tour stuff. And the geniuses in Portland, all they had to see was ICE. It didn't connect Ice Cube, the rapper and actor. And all they saw in big letters was ICE on the side of this 40-foot white bus, so they firebombed it. They set it on fire. Because ICE triggers the far left here almost as much as Trump does. But I saw this a couple weeks ago, and ICE wants to put these gloves into play, okay? So ICE bought shock gloves. Yeah, shock, S-H-O-C-K. DHS published a procurement notice for $20 million worth of these devices. And with the goal of equipping ICE officers and agents. The devices are being described officially as conductive distraction and de-escalation devices. And I saw a clip of this a couple weeks ago in action. And it's not quite the same as using the taser gun, where you shoot and you got two prongs that go into the person, you pull the trigger and it, but it does keep the agent insulated while it does create a shock to whatever they touch. So ICE wants to put these electric shock technology in the hands of federal immigration agents. What say you on this? 508-871-7000. Now, Homeland Security issued the notice. They're going to spend somewhere between 10 and 20 million. They'll have thousands of these wearable devices. And they are gloves, but that also, and boy, doesn't the federal government love the acronyms. Like when people refer to the Patriot Act, that's an acronym. It's not just the word Patriot. And somebody was real proud of themselves that day, I'm sure. But the acronym for glove, generated low output voltage emitter. And they're intended to help the agents with compliance from people. Now they're supposed to be out and as part of equipment by March next year. And the government doesn't describe these as weapons at all. They call them conductive distraction and de-escalation devices. So we're talking about electric shock device designed to make somebody comply because depending on the voltage, and it's not always the voltage with electricity, right? Getting electrocuted, it's the ampage that will kill you. But a little touch and you get that jolt. Now, it doesn't seem like in the clip I saw, and I don't know this, and I don't know if you can adjust and even amp it up or put up the voltage in the middle of the touch or not. But the clip I saw a few weeks ago, it looked maybe 2 or 3 times worse than touching that cow electric fence. I don't know if you guys know when I was a kid, my aunt and uncle had these cows on their property, and all they did is this little wire fence around it. But when you went up and you touched it, it gave you a little shock, and all the cows had to do is get that little shock once, and they decided not to go that direction. So it seemed like it was a little heavier than that, but it didn't send them wriggling and writhing on the floor like the taser gun would do. ICE is buying shock gloves. There's an outrage. Of course there's an outrage. So what tools should law enforcement have when someone refuses to comply? Now, we've seen ICE situations. ICE have had to use force to the point that they have shot people and have killed people. But these were people who were not just not complying. They were using the vehicle as a multiple thousand-pound weapon. In some jurisdictions, and I think we probably see it more in, say, Europe or Germany specifically, water cannons. But they are a tool for a massive disbursement of people, and maybe to control riots or moving mob. These are very individualized, specific, one person, one agent, one person type of thing. And of course, ICE officers, they're not going to stop someone, or they're not going to go to their home or stopping someone in the street because they don't like that person. ICE is a federal law enforcement agency. And I know the left has demonized the term ICE, or the acronym ICE. But they are federal officers with a charter, with a congressionally mandated function and responsibility. That's why and Hochul's at it again today, when these people, these governors and mayors and stuff are trying to tell us that they can't operate in their state. Simply not true. Of course they can. And then they say, well, we're going to order the police departments not to help you with anything. And here's the thing. They didn't have the intellect to see the unintended consequences when they take these stands as sanctuary cities, which don't exist. But even when they've seen years of these consequences, they still don't realize the better thing to do is to cooperate. And what I mean by that is not cooperating with ICE. And it's a simple thing, guys. ICE isn't, or the federal government isn't asking the local police to kick down doors or do anything. They're just saying, hey, when you've got somebody that has an ICE detainer in the courthouse or at the jail, notify us and hold them there till we pick them up. But these police departments and these courts and judges decided to ignore their obligations, and they wouldn't tell ICE. And ICE would find out, and they would get there too late, and they're gone. So ICE has to go into the streets. They have to go find these people with these ICE removals, either detainers or removal orders, at work or where they live or where they hang out. And that's dangerous, because what 2 ICE officers could have gone to the court or jail and picked up somebody in a normal transfer of custody. Now they have to send 8 to 12 agents to take them out of a house or a workplace. And then you get the mob mentality in the crowd that's going to pop up around them. Now everybody in that immediate area is in danger, and their safety has been compromised. And then people who the left is trying to tell us should not be deported because they just came here and they're not criminals and they're not members of gangs. And there's many people like that. There are thousands, probably millions of people who have come here illegally, and that was the last crime they may have committed. Now, they clearly are working. And if they're working under someone else's identity, that's a serious crime. Identity theft is. And if you and I were to commit identity theft, we'd be in big trouble. So I have no sympathy or leeway if you're using somebody else's identity. Now, an awful thing that is done in the illegal immigrant community, illegals, is they will rent an identity, usually from somebody from Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico being a territory of the United States, they're citizens. And they can often assume that identity for a flat fee every month. But if they want to buy a car, finance anything under that identity, they got to pay more money. And that happens, okay? But I got off track here, guys. The point is that ICE had to go into the neighborhood and do all this and then because they're hitting places and there are other illegals there who are not committing major crimes and who don't have removal orders or detention orders or anything, but they're going to get picked up. And that's why they're saying, oh my God, but they're getting people who have, they aren't rapists, murderers, this, that. They're just hard workers. I know them. They're nice people, and they're just trying to have a better life. Yes. And ICE never would have come across their path if you acted like a professional agency, if you acted appropriately, if your jails and your courts and your police departments were allowed to cooperate with ICE, they would have been picking up the bad operators in courthouses, jails, and they wouldn't be in that situation. So your absolute stupidity on this issue has caused thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of otherwise illegals who were not raising any red flags. They were flying under the radar because, sure, they broke the law when they entered the country, but then they are working cash jobs, minding their own business, and just trying to make a better life. So if we expect federal agents to enforce the law, and I'm talking about the law, the statute that gives creation to the ICE agency and Border Patrol, and the statutes that outline their powers and authorities and give them that ability to do that job, to take people into custody, issuing or giving a law enforcement officer or agent, depending on who you work for, you have different titles, right? FBI special agents. And when you see special means arrest power. If you haven't gone to the federal training course, in Georgia, and you don't have, go to work for an agency, but you don't have arrest powers, you could be an officer or an agent. But when you hear the term special agent, they have arrest powers. So an FBI special agent, I know people mock that and make funny, why are you special? Special is just an indicator of arrest powers. But if we expect these federal agents to enforce the law, shouldn't we give them the tools that allow them to do that without immediately escalating to a more dangerous level of force? Because I don't know about you, but I don't want the only options that any law enforcement officer have to be their fists or their hands and then their gun. That's a big leap from being physically able to just control a person and take them into custody to using a weapon, a gun. You got to give them other tools, and that's why they carry tasers and so forth. So isn't this glove a watered-down version of the taser? Now, I know what you're thinking, a lot of you, because I think it too. There's an opportunity to abuse this. There's an opportunity to abuse every tool given to law enforcement. There's an opportunity for you to abuse the tools you have, meaning your car. How many road rage incidences can we find where a otherwise normal person gets hit with that road rage jolt. And now they've turned a 6,000-pound vehicle into a weapon. But sure, there's maybe an opportunity for an ICE agent to abuse this glove. But remember, they're also implementing all the body cams, and when ICE is ever working, there's a zillion iPhones on them and what have you. And just like any other situation where any law enforcement officer has to find that balance between effectively using the tools that they've been issued and authorized to use and going over that line. And so I'm sure when these are in the hands, or on the hands, I should say, of all these ICE agents, you're going to get stories. There's going to be a time that they held that shocking glove a little too long, or used it too many times, or used it after their subject was complying or subdued. That would be a shame. But again, any instrument and any tool that's given to anyone, any law enforcement person, has the ability to being used in the wrong way. I think this is good. An officer can use less lethal compliance device rather than physically wrestling someone to the ground, which, although may be entertaining to watch, is not very safe for either of them, or escalating to something much more dangerous, right? The argument can be made, it can blow up, right? It can blow up really fast. This could help make it safer for everybody. And that is the government's basic rationale for this. So the government is saying, hey, you know what? This is a de-escalation device. And I know, as I said, the thought is, well, who watches the watchers? How are we going to make sure that this isn't abused? Well, the question is that, who's going to watch the watchers? Because the device is designed to cause pain and just disrupt somebody's ability to resist. And the gloves are intended to deliver painful electric shocks to gain that compliance. Lesser degree to the taser gun, but same idea. And critics are particularly concerned because the gloves aren't necessarily visually obvious in the way the conventional, less lethal equipment is, right? And we know, because when an officer, whether it's your local police officer or ICE agent or anyone else, the taser gun is usually yellow, and it's held on the opposite side of the officer, whatever side they have their weapon on. It's on the opposite side. So a right-handed officer, the taser is going to be housed on the belt on the left side of their body. And the training is, hey, when you see them pull this out, but they also tell you multiple times, whenever it's can be done, that they're going to tase you. And they'll give you warnings and say, comply, get out of the vehicle or I will tase you. Get down on the ground or I will tase you. Turn around, put your hands on the car or I will tase you. Stop coming at me. Drop the knife or I'll tase you. And then they're usually trained to say and yell, taser, 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 as they're doing it. There's not a lot of vagueness, but you're about to get tased. But when you have these electric gloves on, it's going to be much quicker use and far less obvious, right? So they're not obvious in the way that the yellow taser is and how they handle that. So if an agent uses force, how do we know exactly what happened? You know, was the person really resisting? Was the amount of force that the officer used appropriate? Was the device activated once or repeatedly, right? Because when you use the taser gun and those little electrodes come out and they penetrate into your skin. They're completing a circuit, and the taser makes that noise. You can hear it. And when the officer releases up on the trigger, you hear the break in it. And then they might zap you again. Now, yeah, I've seen videos where it seems like they held the trigger maybe longer than they should have, but it all has to depend on that assailant, right? What's their body mass? Are they drunk or high? You can tolerate a lot more pain if you're on some certain party favors. And of course, the big question won't be, is the person already under control? Were they complying and were they detained and under control when you touched them or you activated the glove when you touched them? And all of this, the question is, hey, was the body camera recording? Those are legitimate questions, regardless of whether you support ICE or not. Because let's face it, guys, these gloves, if they make it to ICE and they become pretty much standard equipment, you don't think they're going to make their way into Homeland Security, Border Patrol, U.S. Marshals, and then maybe even your local and state police agencies? 5 years from now, these gloves could be standard equipment in cruisers. Could happen. So was the camera recording? And maybe the policy should be, you can't have these electric gloves if you don't have a body camera on you, because there are ICE agents. Not every one is equipped with the body camera yet. That's happening. So these are all legitimate questions. I don't care where you stand on ICE. But this is always, and my libertarian streak in me and my constitutionalist in me says, always worried about government overpower. ICE good, critics bad. Not cut and dry, right? It should be government has legitimate power, but government power must have limits. I'm always concerned about when government oversteps. And we don't want criminals attacking police officers and them not having any tools here. We certainly also do not want government agents having unlimited authority to inflict force on citizens. And both things can be true at the same time. You can support immigration enforcement and demand strict rules governing the use of the force. I think that's a healthy perspective. But having oversight and strict rules governing government in general is a good principle for us guys. And you can believe someone who violently resists arrest should be restrained, and believe an officer should be held accountable if excessive force is used. And I think that's an intellectually honest position to have. But this is a $20 million question, right? Why $20 million? Hey, that's what it's going to cost to procure this. Now, some things haven't been answered. How many agents are getting them? And again, I think just my own, nobody asked, but that's what I'm here to do, is give you my opinion. And my opinion is I don't think these gloves should be issued to any officer or agent that does not have a body camera running on themselves, so that there's no question. And I know when they first came out meeting the body cameras, man, the police and the federal agents, they weren't particularly okay with that idea. But they are pretty much now. We've had incidences where the actual officer themselves have used their personal money to buy a body cam because the station hasn't caught up with that. And I'm remembering one particular story. It was the Hispanic officer who pulled over a black woman who happened to be, I think, a teacher or might even been administration, and she was horrible, Karen. And it actually was so racist to this officer because he looked Mexican, and saying that he shouldn't be in the country, go back, and do you even speak English? I mean, she was horrible. And she got to the school and filed a complaint on this guy to try to preemptively protect her, CYA. And he had a body camera on, but not a department issued camera. He had a camera he bought with his own money. So I don't think that these agents getting them should be able to get these without the body cam. I think they need to put body cameras on ICE agents immediately. And of course, the question is, how often can they be used? What's the training requirement? Are they just issued and you're told how to turn them on and off? Or are there specific guidelines as to when they may be activated and used? What needs to be said? Just like they're taught with the taser gun, to tell them that they are going to get tased if they don't comply. And they do this multiple times, unless it's a situation where they have to act fast. And the option is hit them with the taser or shoot them with a gun. But otherwise, they tell you, I will tase you if you don't comply. I will tase you if you don't get down. And then they yell, tase, tase, tase while they're doing it. So what's the training requirements on this? In other words, what's the rules of engagement? And then what does happen if an agent misuses one? Is every activation automatically documented? Or back to the cameras? And how many other cameras are on the situation? So are the body cameras required to be running? First of all, the policy to every law enforcement agency that I know of, I don't know of anywhere the policy isn't as soon as you engage, you turn your camera on. Meaning if you have a traffic stop, as you get out of that cruiser, your camera has to be on. Some departments never shut it off. It's streaming from the moment you begin your shift to when you end the shift. So that means every conversation in your cruiser is actually being recorded. But most departments and most agencies, as soon as you need to engage the public, your camera goes on. And then the question, obviously, guys, is always who's right. We're back to who watches the watchers and who watches or reviews the use of force in this. So are we buying a tool or are we changing the culture of policing with this? But folks, this is going to wrap up the Thursday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. I am Joe Mangiacotti, and this show is turned into a podcast, folks. So check it out. Subscribe to it. Have a fantastic week, guys. Joe out.